Welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast, where we come together to make a difference in the lives of children in foster care and the families who care for them. Foster Friendly communities are part of a nationwide movement by America's Kids Belong that helps people from all walks of life take action and help kids and families thrive. You'll hear from former foster youth, foster and adoptive parents, social workers, faith and business leaders, and other experts on how to engage in meaningful ways. Our hosts Brian, Travis, and Courtney explore inspiring stories of everyday people making a difference in foster care where they live and work.
Welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast. Today, we're talking with a woman who came across a story in 2019 that would change her and her family's life forever. She learned about 7 siblings who were in foster care for a year following the tragic car accident that took the lives of their parents. About to be empty nesters, Pam Willis and her husband Gary said yes to pursuing adoption of all 7. We'll hear much more about this incredible story and how Pam now uses her platform to raise awareness and inspire others to consider stepping up for kids in foster care. Pam and her husband now live in California. They are former foster parents and now parents to 12 kids, including their 5 adult biological kids and those 7. Pam was previously a nurse for 14 years and has been an attorney for the last 14 after getting her law degree in 2010. Their adoption story went viral, as you can imagine, on Instagram through a video that she put together and was shared by Kristen Bell and Michael Bublé, among many others, propelling this story and gaining a following of more than 100,000 virtually overnight. Pam has appeared in People magazine and on Kate Hudson's Sibling Revelry podcast. She was also a guest on the Red Table Talk Show with Jada Smith. Pam has used her unexpected fame for good, dedicating what little spare time she has to raise this awareness and the needs for kids in foster care. Welcome to the podcast today, Pam Willis.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
We are excited to have you.
Very grateful.
I always appreciate an opportunity to talk about our story and educate others on things that even I never knew as a foster parent. So
Yeah. Well, Courtney and I are really both looking at this conversation. So before we dive right into have you kind of get us into the journey and the backstory of how this all started, there's a great quote by the Spanish writer Paul Coelho, and he says, "One cannot judge the beauty of a path merely by looking at its entrance." And I think of how many people see sort of entrances into adoption foster care as, intimidating, or it's I don't see where this is going to lead. And so therefore, I'm not even going to go down the path. Now,
Right.
Your path is a very dramatic where this thing goes. So take us into this just incredible adoption story. It's 2019. You just ended your time fostering. You and your husband, Gary, are on the verge now of becoming empty nesters. Freedom, peace, and quiet. And then you saw a story on your Facebook feed that changed everything. Okay.
That's right. So we had fostered for about 5 years, and we started doing that when our bio children got a little bit older. So at the time that we were thinking of stopping, just for temporarily, because we felt like we were going to move or maybe downsize. We had fostered for 5 years, had several children for over a year, and they all had either reunification or went to a family member. So throughout our fostering journey, we hadn't ever really been presented with the question of, do you want to adopt the children that you're fostering? So, we were foster parents, and we felt wonderful with that, serving that role and caring for the children until reunification or until they went to, another family member. So we really wanted to continue that. But our youngest of our 5 children was graduating from high school, and our second youngest was about to get married, and the 3 older ones were already married. So yes, we were definitely getting to that empty nest point. And we have a huge house that we had raised them all in. So we thought, well, we should probably downsize. I mean, it's silly to have, just the 2 of us and maybe 1 or 2 foster children in this huge 6-bedroom house. So let's downsize, let's move. And so we started doing some things to get ready to move. And both of us were kind of hesitant. We've lived in this house for a long time. At that point, it was probably like 15 years or so. And so we just really loved that house. And, we were like, oh, I don't know if we want to move. So we're hemming and hawing about it. January 2019, I'm scrolling Facebook, as you said, and I just see a news story. We're sort of in between San Diego and LA where we live. So this was a news story from San Diego. And it had a row of children sitting, all in a line. They were dressed like in their, nice Christmas outfits, because it was January, as I said. And the title said 7 siblings in need of forever home. So right away, of course, I knew that was a foster adoption type story. So I click on it because I'm always drawn to these stories, of course. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, these poor children. I'm looking at all their faces as they're lined up in this photo, and they're smiling. They have these smiles on their faces, but their eyes just looked so sad. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, this is awful, because it's so hard to place 7 children together anywhere, much less, I've seen like 4 even have a difficult time being placed together. Maybe 3 is doable, but over that, it's hard sometimes to keep kids together. So I just thought, gosh, no one's going to have room for them. And then just immediately, I'm telling you, like a bolt of lightning, the next thought was, you have room for them. And it was so immediate and so convicting that I just knew that I needed to check on them, and I needed to see if I would be the one that would adopt them. And so I thought, well, what am I going to tell my husband? How am I going to tell him that these children need me? I need to be their mother. It was so immediate. There was a little video, a news story that went along with it. And I watched the news story, and I'm looking at the kids, and I'm like, kind of recognizing some of the needs, of course, because when you've fostered long enough, you see the trauma, behaviors, or the masks that the children wear to, be brave, have these brave faces. And the little 11-year-old was just, like the little mommy, and she was talking so maturely. And I thought, oh, that one's going to need a lot of love. And, I'm going through and I'm looking at each of them, and I'm falling in love with them already as I'm watching this little video. So I thought, it was a Facebook post. So I just tagged my husband's name, and I thought, okay, he'll read it. And then I'll approach the subject with him, because he's going to see these pictures and he's going to fall in love with these kids too. I just know it. So I waited a few hours, and I think that was like on my lunch break. So after work, I went downstairs and I said, hey, did you see that photo, that Facebook story that I tagged you in today? And he was sitting on the couch, and he said, oh, the 7 children? And I said, yeah. And I kind of looked at him, and he said, we should adopt those kids. And it was this moment of, and then I turned on him, and I was like, are you serious? You want to adopt 7 children? I was like really expecting that I was going to have to talk him into it. And the interesting thing that I think really prepared us was the child that we had right before this situation was a newborn, and we had him for quite a while, and no one really came to visit him. They couldn't find any family members. That was the only situation where it was like even brought into the back of our minds that maybe this child might need someone to adopt them. But then they ended up finding a family member. And so, we kind of like that thought came forward for a moment for us, but, it quickly disappeared because we knew that they had found a family member. And so we sort of prepared ourselves for that situation, which is always difficult, of course. But I think that was sort of the, God sort of preparing us for the idea, that idea wasn't out of the question. And so immediately I called the phone number that was listed on the news story. It was the news station, and they do, this feature now and then. So they had sort of a way set up to take these calls. And I called and I gave my information, and then they said, oh, you're you're already a foster parent. Oh, let me put you through, to this person. And so I got to talk to probably a few more people than I would have if I was in the state, because they said thousands of people called.
Wow.
And, but I said, I'm in the state, we have a large house, we're already, certified resource family. And so they were like, okay. So I kind of felt like, okay, I'm on the list, I'm on the, the preferred list. But at the same time, when they said thousands of people have called, I kind of was like, okay, I guess they'll be taken care of. I feel better. I'm glad so many people called. It's going to work out for them. It's because I would have never thought in a million years that out of thousands of people that they would say, oh, you're the one we want. I just, it didn't cross my mind, even though I knew in my heart, like, I really should be their mom. This morning I woke up, I couldn't stop thinking about them. I went and watched the video again, and I looked at the picture every day for the next couple of days, and then I called again. And just want to check on them, make sure you have my name, make sure you have my information. They put me through to someone else, and then to someone else. So I actually got to talk to one of the social workers, and she was really nice. We had a great conversation, and I hung up, and I thought, well, how am I gonna not look like this crazy person? I want to call every day. I was at this point, I was like, I need to help these children. I need to make sure and know that they're okay. And I really owned the issue. And it wasn't very long before they started calling me back and started talking to me, asking me if the social workers could meet with me. And so that went on for a couple of months. And then they matched us, to say you can meet the children. And so we met them in March. So the news story we saw in January, we met them in March. We were in love with them immediately. They moved in June. As soon as the last day of school, they moved right in. And the rest was history.
I'm just curious, for that time period, where were they? Where were they in that waiting period?
They had been in a foster home for a year, and for their story, they had actually lost both of their parents in a car accident. They were all in the accident together, and we didn't know this at the beginning of the story. That wasn't part of the news. But they had all been together in the car, and they were actually planning to leave the state. So they just had like a U-Haul trailer, and all the kids were packed in the car, but there weren't any seats in the car. So they were all just on the floorboards of the like a SUV, and the vehicle rolled out like in the desert areas outside of San Diego. And so the parents were killed instantly on the crash site, and all of the children were injured. They all went to the hospital. The older ones were in the hospital for a couple weeks. They had some pretty serious injuries, and the younger ones thankfully weren't as injured, but they all had some sort of injury, a broken bone or scratches or bruises. But the older two were seriously injured, and once they all got out of the hospital and had been sort of at the temporary group home there, they found a foster home that would take them all. It wasn't an ideal situation because they were kind of, cramped in there, but it was ideal in the fact that, they were together. Right. They were together. They didn't have to be separated. And they started, looking for someone to take them, but in the family, in their family. But the problem was the parents had both grown up in foster care and aged out. And the parents didn't have really family connections at all, or anyone that could really take them. And so it was just I think for them, they must have felt so alone in the world,
right?
Just the seven of them. So I can't imagine them being separated and feeling like, okay, I lost my parents and I'm losing, whatever siblings have to be separated out. So I'm just
it's huge.
So grateful that they were able to stay together, even though it wasn't the best situation. They were at least together. I think that's all that mattered to them at that point.
That is awesome. Very rare.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say, I think the statistics are something like 50% of kids put into foster care and sibling groups are separated. And you have to think from a certain number up, it's got to be even higher. I mean, 7 to all be together? Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Incredible.
So it really was. And they had been there just like by the time they moved in with us, I think it was exactly a year that they had been in foster care, and they really wanted them to finish that school year. Because it was really kind of the only time they had ever lived in the same place long enough to like go through a full school year at the same school. And the oldest one was graduating from 8th grade, so he had a ceremony, and then the second oldest was graduating from 6th grade. So they both had these, big momentous occasions that the social workers really felt, and I agreed totally that they should participate in. So we just drove down. It was like an hour and a half. We drove down every weekend and took them out to the park and spent time with them as much as we could. And we called them during the week and just started developing our relationship. And by the time they were moving in, they were like, when can we live here? When can we live here? So it was really nice. It was definitely a smooth transition for them, and one that they were ready for at the time, which I think worked out, in their favor.
Oh, incredible.
Where along the lines, I mean, you get more into like your own biological kids as they converge into the story, but like at the time, I mean, your friends, other family, though your adult kids, I mean, is everyone going like, mom and dad, like, hold on here? Or was it more, we know you and this is why would we be surprised?
Yeah,
or
probably a little bit of both. Probably a little bit of both, that, oh, you're crazy, but also we know you. And if anyone's going to do it, you're going to do it, kind of thing. I mean, understand that all of these people are the people that watched me with my 5 children. My youngest started kindergarten and I decided, let's go to law school, so that's kind of,
that's right. Yeah.
They were just kind of like, okay, but they had different concerns, different opinions. My older children, the oldest was very, practical, like, financially, it's just, you're going to be okay with your retirement and everything, and I said, we'll be fine. We'll be totally fine. And so he said, okay, this is what you want to do. And remember, they had been still, even though they were out of the home, they were still around the foster care. And so anytime there was a new child in the home, every single one of them just embraced that child as family. They would walk in and there'd be a new child there, and they would automatically be, hello, what's your name? And, they just knew the drill. They all have beautiful hearts, and they all were just very accepting of anyone who was there for however long. And so that piece of their heart was definitely open to having, other members of our family be for however long they were there. And many of them, like I mentioned, were there for over a year. So it wasn't usually a temporary, very temporary thing, like a week or so. It was a year and another year and another year, So, my girls, who are my 3rd and 4th children, they were, of course, like, oh my gosh, you have to take, their maternal instincts were just like mine. So we have to take those babies. They have to be in our family. And my oldest daughter, she's my 3rd child, she said something that was so sweet and so touching to me that I've never forgotten it. She said, Mom, we had the best childhood. Like, you guys are the greatest parents. She's like, why would I deny someone else of having that experience? And I was just brought to tears. I thought, oh my goodness, that, what a sweet thing to say, and what a sweet way to look at it, to think that, if I had a good childhood, that, someone else deserves that too. And that always still brings tears to my eyes, having her say that, So they were very kind and sweet and accepting immediately, as soon as they kind of checked in with us, like, you sure? Okay. You crazy? Okay.
check.
We're like, all right, let's do it. So it was wonderful to have that acceptance. And, my family really just rallied around them and got prepared, to accept them into the family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So helpful for you guys and for the kids to feel that welcoming and support.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to speak into a little bit, with 400,000 kids in foster care in the United States and 100,000 of them waiting to be adopted. Like you said, you guys hadn't really thought about adoption before that. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this haven't really thought about it. But maybe could you even speak into the empty nester thing? Because I've been, as a foster mom and as a foster care recruiter, I have seen some of our absolute best foster homes be empty nesters that have kind of walked those shoes already of parenting and have that experience. Most of the kids waiting for adopted are sibling groups or youth or kids with some medical needs. And all these parents, they've already done it. So can you speak into that a little bit of being an empty nester and maybe encourage others?
Yeah, what I really found is that doing this sort of the second time around, because really we were, pretty complete of raising that first set, and we really did start all over again. The youngest of the 7 was 2. So we had a 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old, and then the older 2, they were graduating 6th and 8th grade. So what I found, my husband and I both say the same thing, we're a little more relaxed in that. I guess, when you're raising your first children, you have these, standards that you think, oh my gosh, you've got a C in chemistry. That's it. You're never getting into a good
Right.
college. Your life is, going the wrong way, and you have these thoughts like, oh, you've got to, keep them on this path so that they can achieve something great in their lives. And of course, they're people, they do what they want to do. You
Right.
can't control them as much as you think you can. And so I had children who said, nope, not going to college. And I had one that went into the military, and I had one that, was a missionary for a while. And so at that point, my older 3 and the 4th was about to get married. They had great lives, and they hadn't done exactly what I thought they were going to do or supposed to do, or what I was supposed to push them towards. Actually, probably none of them had done it, the way I thought it was going to be. And so I was able to sort of sit back and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. I don't have to make their path to some, perfect outcome. I just need to foster their own, self-worth and their own ability to choose for themselves what makes them happy in life. And I need to love them and help them heal. And the rest will come naturally as they, so I think that's the benefit of doing it as an older parent, because you can sort of look back and say, okay, well, so far these guys are okay, so far maybe I've done a good job. And so I think it helps you a little bit realize that you can relax on the day to day and not be so stressed out about, the report card or whatever it may be.
That's a really good point. And I think that's a good reminder too, of just for people that are looking to be foster parents or adopting from foster care, that whole thing of just the start of it just being the place of stability and love, and like you're saying, letting them be who they are and grow and make mistakes. But I think there's that sort of back to that quote about the trail, it's like, well, man, we got to have all this together before we embark on the journey, or I've got to have, yes, trainings, all that's important, and knowledge, but it can also be the very thing that's stopping you from even starting.
Right. And I know that it can be intimidating because there's always the stories out there and sort of the stigma that maybe foster child might be difficult to care for. And what I found really was that as long as I was educated and understood trauma and childhood trauma, that you could almost always look at a behavior or something that the child was exhibiting in the lens of trauma. It definitely doesn't feel the same way as, if your child's throwing a temper tantrum and, they've had everything they've ever needed. And what do you have to be, what do you have to be so upset about? You really see the basic needs of the child that maybe hadn't been fully met, like just safety and security and, self-worth. And those things, when you see those things through, you see their behaviors that they exhibit, which, for us, we had expectations of a lot of behaviors with these kids, and we really didn't end up having as much as we thought. We thought, gosh, they've been through just a horrible time. They had bounced from home to home. They had been homeless. Their parents had, drug issues. They were exposed to domestic violence and drugs and alcohol and all these awful things. And we thought, gosh, they're going to need so much, work. And but it wasn't work. It was just being a family and being consistent and being, that safe place and being there. That really was the biggest part of their healing. It wasn't something magical that I had to do to, change behaviors. All of the trauma and the understanding of the trauma helped me, view what they were going through in a certain lens, but it didn't necessarily change drastically the way I had to parent, which I thought, was really interesting to me as I was going through it. And I still say all the time that I learn every day. My teenagers, they're now 18 and 16, and they teach me so much because they have a lot of memory of the things that they went through. But in our home, we've always been very open for them to talk about anything and everything that they want to talk about. Thankfully, I was able to find a Facebook page that their mother had. So I downloaded all the pictures and I gave them photo albums, and so they all have photos, and we talk about their first mommy and daddy all the time as much as they wanted to. I gave them a frame. If they wanted to put it in their room, they could put their picture of their, first mommy and daddy in their room, and just really made it okay to talk about absolutely anything they wanted to talk about. And so because that's been our way of doing things, my teenagers are now very open and able to articulate things so well as they go through, these growth challenges. I think they're even better able to articulate what they're feeling and thinking than my first set of children was, because they didn't have to necessarily maybe process through it all. It was just kind of like, oh, this time in my life is hard and it sucks and whatever.
Right.
My boyfriend broke up with me, boo-hoo. But when you're viewing it through a lens of someone who's had so much loss in their life and so much pain, and relationships haven't always been wonderful, they gain this insight because you start talking and you have these conversations. And so they teach me every single day. They teach me so much. And I feel like I'm just gathering everything they say because I still have the other 5 to be teenagers. And so I have a little ways to go with that. And that knowledge, I think, is so useful. So they're such a blessing. I mean, it's the biggest blessing that I never expected that was waiting for us.
Yeah. Definitely have a mother's heart, just the way you speak and everything. I always tell people the age-old saying, if they just need love, it's like, well, they don't just need love, but the home environment. I think that's the biggest key. What you create, that safe, loving place where they feel safe, they know they're safe, and they know that they're loved and they belong.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it really is the most important thing, even for my foster children who I never knew how long they would stay. As quickly as I could, I would get a photo and put it in a frame and hang it on the wall next to the rest of our photos, because to them, I wanted them to feel like I'm real, I'm here, I'm part of your family, and little things like that are so simple that help a child just feel wanted and worthy. There's so many great, tips that I've picked up along the way of, fostering and reading, lots of I read everything, I read all kinds of things to try to understand. And my background as a nurse, of course, with learning about childhood development and, things like that. It's just always been something that I'm interested in. So it helps a lot.
Yeah, great point too. The ongoing learning. I love you saying that, of just that here you are. Some people look at you and go, wow, you're some guru that's just you to do what you're doing, and then formerly a foster parent, an attorney now. I mean, all this stuff. But like what you're saying is you're still learning and still using a community to, get ideas and bounce ideas back from other foster and adoptive parents. That's really cool. That's really an important part, is that ongoing learning.
And I think it's good for the children to hear me say that too. I say that to them, like, you're learning, you're going through this, but guess what? I've never been through this with a person who's had your experiences. Yeah. And so each time I go through this with a different child, I learn a little bit more, because everyone goes through these things differently. And I think that probably gives them a sense of importance.
Yep.
I'm not looking at you like my sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth child. I'm looking at you as what are your individual experiences and what can you and I work through together and learn together. So I always say, I make mistakes. I'm learning too. You're learning. I'm learning. And we sort of get through things together in that way, just being open and honest about it.
Very cool.
Definitely. So what about your support? Adding 7 kids to your already 5 that were adults, but still, I mean, that's a big change. What was your community and what is your community like? Your family, your friends, your neighbors? What does that look like and how are you supported to keep going?
Let me tell you that I never expected the support that I got from people that just really wanted to help. There's so many people that have a heart for children in foster care, but maybe aren't in a position at that time in their life to foster. I had people calling me saying, "Can I come do laundry for you?" I mean, they were bringing me meals, which I didn't expect or ask for or anything. Just friends from church who they were saying, "What can we do? Is there something that people want to help you? What can they do for you?" And I was kind of like, well, there's not a lot, because at first they were like, "Do you need us to babysit or something?" And for me, I was trying really hard to, give the stability to the kids. So I didn't want to leave them yet at that point, but they were kind of digging, like, what can we do? It ended up they came over like day after day. Different people came over and helped me like sort through all of these clothing donations that they had, and sort sizes of clothes and shoes and things for them, and fix their rooms, put together bunk beds and all of these things that had to be done to get their belongings put away and feel like things were settled for them, while still giving them the attention that they needed in those first few days, because that time of transition, of course, is best if I'm right there and available to answer questions or soothe any concerns. And so having these people come and help do all of these other things so that I could focus on the children during that time was just incredible. And I didn't realize that it was something I needed, but as it was happening, I just felt so blessed. And so that was the support that I had from, my church, my community, and my church. And as far as my family, my immediate family, they were just, as I mentioned, very warm and accepting. And any contact that they had with the kids was just kind and gentle. And they understood all of the, the way that we would do things when a new child would come into our home. So this was similar, because we never treated a foster placement any differently than, you're here to stay. We don't know for how long, and we're not going to treat you as a temporary person, so it was something that they knew how to do, and they did it beautifully, and everyone really felt accepted, I think, and felt comfortable in the home. And the kids, pretty immediately started just running around like they'd been there forever, and going outside to play in the backyard and things like that. So it was really nice.
Yeah, I just can't shake the image of thinking what you said earlier of the picture. This is switching topics a little bit, but back to just picture the like you just said, like, so they feel like they're not just temporarily, sort of family members, but even if they will be, you don't know, they don't know their story of how much longer, if you're in foster care, that'll be. But even just the image of you having that photo on the wall, when you think of kids in foster care, who I always think of, there's in this season where their story is swirling around, like so much uncertainty. What's going to happen next? Am I going home? Will I be adopted? Will my parents do what they need for the judge to go home? Switching schools, what's all happening? Even that simple, like, that's on the wall is a grounding thing to like visually see, I'm here with these guys. And that's such a beautiful tip. My mind went back to that as I'm thinking, even like community support and them feeling supported and anchored.
So the other piece of that was I would always make 2 copies, and I would give them a copy and say, when you go to your visit, you can give this to mommy and daddy. And so it never was like, you're here, you're mine, I now have a photo of you because I wanted to be cognizant of that as well. We don't know what the outcome will be. So I wanted them to know that, look, here's this picture of you. I love you and you're important enough to be on my wall, but also here's a picture for you to give to mommy and daddy, and they can have it on their wall too. You never tell children what the outcome is going to be, because you never know,
Right.
and we're always advised as foster parents not to really discuss the case especially with little ones. Because you don't know if the parents are going to be able to work their plan and what's going to happen, but always being cognizant that, yes, you're part of our family for as long as you need to be part of our family. And if that's, 5 years or 6 years or 1 month, however long that is, you're just as important as anyone else.
It's beautiful.
So, yeah, it is. Thinking about and this podcast is foster friendly. And so as Courtney was asking about support, I mean, this is, you've just detailed it in your own story, what that looks like for everyone to feel like they do have a role. They have a place they can help. And you're an ongoing living example of that in your story, of where, whether it's your church community or just friends, and everyone sees how they can fit in, and together we can do this together.
Yeah.
I want to as we're kind of closing to the final turn on this conversation, going back to your story. So I look at, like, you have this significant, like, initial part of taking in 7 kids and the dramatic nature of that. And oh my gosh, the other part that's dramatic then is what then comes along after that, in terms of your family coming together. Your daughter has an idea about a video to make.
Yeah.
and just take us into where then this story kind of blows up then, in terms of, and how all that developed. I know that could be a whole podcast, but just
right.
the snapshot of that.
Well, remember that they came to live with us in the middle of 2019. So what happened in 2020? We had everyone on lockdown. We were homeschooling 7 children. We were, all stuck in this house together, which at the time was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to make this work? And when we got through it, it really ended up being the best thing we could have had happen, because we were able to really kind of what they call cocoon with them, as you're adopting and bringing children into your home and allowing that, family unit to develop. That really happened during the time where we were in the pandemic and couldn't go to school and things like that. So that, as a sort of preface to the next part, I will say, I think assisted our bonding so much, and possibly, we bonded more quickly because we were together all the time, rather than me having to send them all to school every day and not see them all day long. I was there. We were schooling them. Thankfully, we had a nanny who was willing to come in and out during that time, because that was the hugest blessing to us, to have that help. But my older daughter is an influencer on social media, and so she sort of knows all the tricks, and she said, Mom, you should make an Instagram page and just share your story. It's such a great story. And I said, I would love to talk about foster care and adoption and all of these things that I never knew. And so I thought, I'm going to do this Instagram page. I had to learn Instagram. I was only kind of Facebook, I didn't know all this stuff. And my daughter was, she knew how to make all these cute little TikToks and things like that. And there was something popular at the time that was going around where you would sort of like jump up and down, and there'd be a transition, every time you hit the ground, you'd be in a different. So she said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do like your whole life in, I don't know how long those things are, like 45 seconds or something. And she said, you met when you were in the 80s. So, you're going to dress like you're in the 80s, and then you're going to jump up and down, and you're going to be married, and then you're going to jump up and down. You're going to be a nurse, and Dad's in the military. And so we did this whole thing. And at the very end, we jump up and down and we land, and the 7 kids land with us. And so it kind of just told our story really quickly and really basically, that we had raised these 5 and then we're empty nesters. And then here came these 7. And, she said it to music. It was cute. And if you see it, if you ever find it and see it, imagine my daughter in the background trying to get her parents who she's like clapping, like 1, 2, 3. She's doing this. We're like being drilled. I do this thing perfectly. And it turned out so cute. And I thought,
Yeah,
oh, that's just adorable. I'm going to post that. My little group of followers of like, I don't even know, maybe 5,000 or something at the time, they'll just love this. And I woke up the next morning and I had like, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 followers. It just kept going. And I was like, what is happening? The girls are sending it to me. They're like, Mom, it's got 1 million views.
Dang.
And then the girls are the ones that said, these are the people that are sharing it and this is what's happening. And the story just blew up. And I thought, this is the time that I can take this moment of my, 5 minutes of fame or whatever you want to call it, to utilize that moment to share with others what is out there and what joy can be brought from, going through this process, this adoption process that a lot of people don't even know, is available, and that there are children that they can bring into their home and just enrich their lives as parents, I'm saying, and enrich the children's lives too. But I mean, our lives have been so enriched, it's definitely been a mutual thing. And so utilizing that platform is my passion. And I love any time, of course, that I'm invited to share like this on a podcast, or when I can share on my story. I think I settled at about like 150,000 followers ish. And I basically just post on my story every day, the day-to-day stuff that we're doing. And people are so kind. They're so sweet. And sometimes they'll message me and say, oh, I followed you, since the beginning. But the greatest thing is that I've had several people message me and say, how do I do this? How do I get started? How do I become a foster parent, or how can I adopt from foster care? And I'll usually just, stop whatever I'm doing. I'll say, okay, where do you live? And I'll look up their county and I'll say, okay, here's some agencies. This is what you're going to do. You're going to call and find out if there's an orientation, and I just sort of try to just, give them the very beginnings of it. Because I remember when I even wanted to foster, I was like, so how does one go about this? I just didn't know anything. It's kind of confusing because there's private agencies, or you can go through your county, or what do I do? What's best, and it's not necessarily always really easy to follow or easy to understand. So I wanted to be that, voice for people and that safe place to come and ask questions. And I've had followers come back and say, we took our first placement, and I've had followers come back and say, our adoption is final. And it just like every single child, you don't have to take 7. Every single one is important. And every single child that has found a home, it's worth everything I've done, as far as trying to take extra time to put these things out on social media. Of course, when you put yourself out there, people, there's always the negative people. You have to go through that, kind of ignore the rude comments. But it was worth it. It was worth it because I know that there have been some children adopted, even just from my story being shared. And that's the biggest blessing of all.
That's awesome. There's a great line. The world is changed by your example, not your opinion. And we have so many opinions in this world and here you are, you're a living example that, I love that. I love how you're using your platform now. Thanks.
I'm really excited about it. And we have some things coming up too. I can't talk a lot about it, but we're going to have some more demonstration of what our family is like in a more public forum pretty soon.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
To see what that is.
Something that others can tune in and watch. So
cliffhanger for everybody. There we go.
Yeah, you guys got the scoop.
It's a good teaser. Yeah. Okay. Oh wow, nice.
It's all coming together. It's been actually a really interesting journey, when I got the calls from all these reporters, People Magazine and the newspaper and all these people wanted me on their podcast, which was wonderful. I really wanted to do it all. I couldn't do all of it at the same time, but I was a bit overwhelmed. And, producers calling, oh, we want to make a movie, all these things. And it was just like, what do I do? I'm not, I still work full time at home. I still have all these children. I didn't have a lot of time to do it. but I've always wanted to continue that public face, because I want to continue advocating. And that above all is what drives me to continue to put myself out there. And, I've never made any money on Instagram. I know people can make money and stuff. Well, actually, I shouldn't say never. I've done a couple little things here and there,
Sure.
because my daughter's an influencer. So she's like, oh, you could do this, little things. And then the kids get money for, going to the zoo or something. We take a video and they're like, yeah,
Right.
but that's not my reason. My reason is I put myself out there every single day because I know that it's important to continue getting the word out. And, when you guys post America's Kids Belong, or any of the states that post, I always try to share those posts and those sweet kids, because of course I want to take them all. I can't. They won't let me take anymore. Can you imagine?
Thanks for doing that.
Oh, they say your home is full.
We're gonna stop you now, okay? Just
I know.
Yeah.
I have to do other things.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Well, you're just obviously a genuine, lovable, down-to-earth mom, you can tell, and somebody that people easily fall in love with, your story and the inspiration of it. And really, I think part of what I heard today too from you is you're not you've become kind of famous through this, but you're not some mega superstar. I mean, you're just a mom, and you guys are just a family, and other people can do this as well.
Right.
Yes, I say that all the time. I'm just a normal person. People say, no. Okay, I'm a normal person who took 7, but you can be a normal person and take 1 or 2, and still make a huge difference. So yes, that's an important piece of it to share. Thank you for saying that, because I do want people to just look at me like, I'm not on some pedestal. I'm just a normal person who wanted to help and wanted to foster, and these opportunities were put in front of me, and God blessed us enough to be able to, manage that and have the space and have the room. But it wasn't ever anything that, I thought of myself as, I am really a great person. I think I'm going to go out and
Right.
It just wasn't like that. It was just being open to what God laid before us, and having that opportunity to jump in and say, let's do it. Let's do it for the sake of these children who really need you.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
But Pam, again, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being willing. And just tell us, how can people follow you if they're not already? How can they follow you? How can they find out more and follow your journey?
Sure. So I came up with the name when I was trying to figure out, something cute to call it. And I really felt like it was our second chance at parenting. And it was their second chance at life. I mean, they almost lost their lives in that accident. And so we named ourselves Second Chance 7. And that's the name of my Instagram. It's all spelled out second, and I think a dot, and chance, and then the number 7. But I'm sure you'll find it if you type in Pam Willis too. That's me. And we'd love to have you just follow our day-to-day silly journey. Right now we're renovating our house. And so our house is, everyone's invested in my construction in my home, and it's just normal stuff. We're just doing normal stuff and being a big family. And we just love sharing and answering questions for others and just being out there. So thanks.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and we'll also include any other links that we can to any of your stories, that featured in like today, or definitely the Instagram video, which is pretty great. You see why it went viral. I mean, it's pretty good.
My daughter's a good director, I think.
People just don't know. Maybe there was take 20 that, we did. So behind the scenes. Well, Pam, you are the best. I'm with Courtney. We're just so grateful to have you, and just your humility, but just also your accessibility, and just lending your life as an example and a story, and then helping others as well. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So thank you so much for being an inspiration to so many.
Of course. Pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, will you help us reach more people by subscribing, sharing the podcast with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review? If you've been inspired by what you've heard today and want to learn more of how you can make a difference for kids in foster care and the foster families where you live, visit americaskidsbelong.org. We depend on individual donors to fund our work. We'd be grateful if you would consider joining us as a monthly donor. Visit americaskidsbelong.org to make your tax-deductible donation. Thank you. Together, we can ensure a family for every child in foster care and a foster-friendly community to ensure every foster family feels loved and supported.